Hello, Alan here. Welcome to our class on discovering Buddhism, brought to you by Vajrayana Institute. Hope you're well and warm. As you can see, I'm streaming from home, and we decided that because there are either few or no people turning up at Vajrayana Institute for the live class, but there's still people watching online. For the next, say, month or two, we'll just have online classes. So it just saves a long drive through peak hour traffic, and we'll actually resume live classes probably about halfway through next term. I think when the weather warms up a bit. I think it's the cold weather that makes it hard for people to go out and late at night and come back late at night. So we'll just do live streaming, and hopefully the message will still get across. Yep. Okay. The class might be a bit shorter without a live audience because it's quite a long time to talk without anybody in the room, and also quite a long time to listen from live streaming without that dynamic of having some class people interacting in the room. So maybe we'll probably tend to finish after an hour and 15 minutes. We'll just see how we go. Hi, Julia. Great to see you there. So let's, as always, start with just a few minutes, say 4 or 5 minutes of breathing meditation to calm the mind. I don't have my gong here, but let's just start now, getting comfortable. What we're doing with our mindfulness practice is watching the breath, not changing the breath, just bringing our attention to the movement of the body with the breath. And so that simplifies what the mind is doing. It gives it a very simple task. And so it tends to discourage the mind from running off with discursive thoughts and busyness. We need to just calm ourselves after the busy day. Okay, just get comfortable, sitting, lying down, whatever's the best way for the body to relax. Now we just start always by just checking our motivation, what's happening in our mind, turning our mind first to appreciate this opportunity we have to practice, study the Dharma, make some progress along the path to enlightenment. Just leaving outside the last busy day that we've just had, and checking first our body, making sure we're comfortable. Body's evenly balanced on the chair or the floor. Shoulders relaxed, back straight. Eyes closed or just gently open, gazing ahead. Now bringing our attention to the breath, the movement of the body with the breath. Nothing to change, just watching the breath. Breath is always there. Now we're giving it our attention without judging, just standing aside and watching. Using the breath to anchor the mind. Thoughts will come and go, as always. We stay with the breath. Part of the mind is watching, monitoring, just checking if we are still on the breath or have wandered. Introspection, that's called. When we notice we've wandered, we just relax, let go of that discursive thought, patiently come back to the breath, home to the breath. All right, thank you. Just relax. Okay, so second class on Introduction to Tantra. Hopefully you got the notes sent out today. Oh, yesterday I think it was, yes. And let's just start with the questions. A couple of questions there. Kick off the class. First one, why are teachings on Tantric called the resultant path? The resultant path. So we looked at this last week. They call Tantra the resultant path, and Sutra, which is the Mahayana teachings that are not Tantra, Sutra teachings, is called the causal path. So the resultant path to enlightenment, that's where the path goes to eventually, full enlightenment, Buddhahood, is taking the results, it's like a rehearsal for our future Buddhahood. The result is that we want to become a Buddha, enlightened being. And so with Tantra Tantric practitioners take in the future result of our practice, full enlightenment, and bring it into the present moment. So this is a distinctive feature of Tantra. Usually the future result takes the shape or form of a deity, which is a form of Buddha's enlightened mind, depending on what particular practice we're doing. We're going to do the meditation on Tara at the end of the class. So if we're practicing Tara in Tantra, that image of Tara, which is probably seen it in tankas, which are the Tibetan drawings of Buddha deities. This is the result. So that's a symbolic result of our practice. The enlightened Tara being the enlightened actions of the Buddha. So the female aspect, of course, Tara, and the female aspects representing enlightened activities, all the enlightened activities of the Buddha embodied in Tara. So if we have a tantric empowerment, if we've been empowered by a tantric master, we're given permission to view ourselves as that tantric deity. Either it could be Tara, Chenrezig, Haruka, Vajrayogini, Manjushri. There's different aspects of Buddha mind. And so that means that we have permission to envisage or visualize ourselves when we're doing the practice as being that future state of Buddhahood. And we bring that into the present. This is me, I am now, Tara. So this all has to be done in the context of the teachings on emptiness, so that we purify our ordinary sense of self. We're not visualizing our ordinary me as Tara, but we go through a purification practice where we realize that this sense of self we have is actually empty of any solid existence. And so we practice emptiness, and then we visualize ourselves as Tara, or whatever the deity is. So this is bringing the future result into the present. So that's why it's called the resultant path. By contrast, the sutra teachings, we look at causes, that's called the causal path. So this is, we accumulate the causes of becoming a Buddha. So the traditional causes in Mahayana Buddhism are, for example, the 6 perfections: concentration, wisdom, patience, compassion. So these states of mind we develop, positive states of mind, as causes to create the karmic imprints, purification imprints, to progress to Buddhahood. It's a slower path, the causal path, than the tantric path. And so those who have, we need to actually understand the causal path. And we'll see later tonight that the qualifications to start tantric practice is to have some understanding of the causal path, the 3 principles of the path. Look at those. So just some understanding of the 3 principles of the path, which is renunciation, compassion, and wisdom, are necessary to enter the tantric path. So that's a very long-winded answer to why it's called the resultant path. Second one is involved in the first question. The second question: characteristic practice of Tantra is deity yoga. Explain the essential features of this practice. So Another word for deity is yidam. You might come across that word. I think that's transcript. Meditational deity or yidam is a Buddha figure who embodies the qualities of enlightenment. And so I just mentioned this a few minutes ago. Chenra, Tara, these different aspects of Buddha mind. So, as I said in the first, I covered this answer actually in the answering the first question. The deity yoga practice, we identify ourselves as having the various enlightened attributes of the meditational deity that we're practicing, that we've been empowered to perform. And so if we do get a highest yoga tantra initiation, one of the commitments is usually, not always, but usually we have some prayers to do every day called a sadhana that is specifically on that deity, that say Tara. And so we need to, we spend some time each day reciting the sadhana and visualizing ourselves as that future Buddha, the deity whose initiation we've received. And as said in the teachings, deity yoga is not just a case of imagining we're someone we're not. It's practice on the basis of this inner Buddha nature that we have, an enlightened potential. That we're bringing out that Buddha nature, which is the first point, or the first thing we're looking at tonight. What Buddha nature is according to Tantra. So so let's have a look at that. I start off with a quote there from Lama Lishi. If you have a look at the notes, dwelling deep within our heart and within the hearts of all beings, without exception, is an inexhaustible source of love and affection, says Lama Lishi. So this is what we usually just refer to as Buddha nature, particularly in the sutra teachings. And one thing that we remember, say if we're doing meditation practice, is that behind our obscurations, our impatience, our selfishness, our attachment, is this Buddha potential within every sentient being, every living being, even an insect, has this Buddha nature. This is what Lama Lishi is talking about there. And but in Tantra, they go into a little bit deeper in the teachings, looking at what that means, what Buddha nature means. And so just looking at His Holiness the Dalai Lama's quote there, what Buddha nature is, he says, it's the subtlest mind wind that is empty of inherent existence and whose continuity goes on to awakening. Last week, if you were here, we did our meditation on continuity of mind. But that meditation helps us to realize that the mind is without beginning. Each moment of mind is caused by a previous moment of mind. And so within that gross mind stream, which we can see working when we do our mindfulness practice, we can see all the thoughts coming up, so many discursive thoughts, images, memories, and so on. So beneath that is a subtler level of mind. And beneath that is a very subtle level of mind. And this is what His Holiness is talking about here. The subtlest mind wind, empty of inherent existence, and whose continuity goes on to awakening. All sentient beings have this subtlest wind mind. It serves as the substantial cause of the wisdom Dhammakaya. Wisdom Dhammakaya will come to later tonight. That's the Buddha, the mind of the Buddha, the omniscient mind of the Buddha. So the tantric practitioner uses methods, various methods, meditation methods, to harness, to access this very subtle wind mind. And then we can purify that wind that mind and transform it into the body of a Buddha. So just to expand a little bit on that, I'm just going to quote His Holiness's teachings on in his. I won't give you the references, too complicated, but one of the very helpful analogies or similes of Buddha nature is that Buddha essence resembles gold buried in filth. So this is what His Holiness says on that. If somebody accidentally drops some gold in a pile of filthy refuse at the side of the road, we don't know it's there if we passes by. We don't think to take it out, clean it and use it. So similarly, while our gold-like Buddha essence is not mixed with defilements, the filth of the manifest coarse three poisons prevents us from seeing it. So those three poisons: attachment, aversion, hatred, and ignorance. Because we're so sidetracked and foggy with these defilements, we don't see the Buddha nature that's there. Though these coarse afflictions are the chief obscuration of these beings in the desire realm. That's us. We're in the desire realm. Human beings are in the desire realm. So these obscurations, defilements, provide the conditions through which we're reborn in the desire realm, this cycle of rebirth. And this is what he's referring to as the filth: coarse attachment, animosity, ignorance. So we dislike ourselves when they rule our minds, and others are repulsed by our behavior. That's when we're acting under their influence. However, gold is pure. It never becomes impure. We cannot see it or use it as long as it is sunk in the filth. Similarly, the emptiness of the mind can never be infiltrated by the afflictions, but it can shine forth when it can't shine forth if it's obscured by troublesome manifest afflictions. Buddha sees the empty nature of our minds, teaches us how to purify it, and instructs us how to transform our minds into the minds of a Buddha. So that gold buried in filth is a very graphic analogy used by His Holiness as our Buddha nature. Just because I hope you've had an opportunity to, or you will have the opportunity to have a look at Lamrim Yeshe's book, Introduction to Tantra. That's probably the best all-round introduction to Tantra of all the texts, I think. From beginning, this is just a quote when Lamrim Yeshe is talking about the thing that stops us from seeing that gold inner Buddha that we have, that we're carrying around, that Lamrim Yeshe says is an inexhaustible source of love and affection, is the habit of ordinary appearances. Ordinary appearances. So this is believing that what our senses see is completely true. Lamrim Yeshe says that, puts it this way: from beginning of this time, we've been brainwashed into believing that the ultimate reality of the world, shown to us by our five extremely limited and dualistic senses, what we see, what we touch, what we smell, what we taste, etc. And in Tantra, we're trying to break this deeply ingrained habit. It's not easy, he says. Our baby wisdom of emptiness is easily overwhelmed by our gross sense consciousness. We're like the scientist who knows from his investigation and reasoning, this is a quantum physicist, he knows that when he sees a table, that it's nothing more than a momentary configuration of energy, of subatomic particles quantum particles. But he still has trouble seeing it as anything but a solid static table. The scientist hasn't changed his mind. He's got intellectual knowledge of what the table really is, but he still sees it as a static table, solid, existing from its own side, which is the way our improved mind will see the world using our senses. That's why says Lamish, that's why we have to train again and again in those visualization practices that dissolve our false notion of concrete self-existence and strengthen our understanding and experience of non-duality. So these practices in Tantra, where we're visualizing ourself as our future Buddha, our enlightened future being, a Tara body, a Chenrezig compassion body, he says we have a much easier time accepting the reality of our gross sensory experiences than we have in believing the visualizations. Okay, and this is what we'll probably think. Although I can see myself as made of light, if I can visualize myself made of light, say green Tara, then, but I know I'm thinking behind that this is just a game. It's not real. My physical body is real. I can actually touch and see it in a mirror. So what does Lamishi say about this way of thinking, which is probably, certainly when we first hear the teachings on Tantric, just say, oh, it's just imagining yourself as Mickey Mouse or something else. But really, I'm just this physical person. What we have to learn, says Lamishi, is that the experience we have through our imagination and those we have through our senses are actually the same, exclamation mark. Both exist only for the particular mind experiencing them. They have no ultimate reality from their own side. A major difference, however, is that our ordinary sense experiences keep us bound in the cycle of recurring dissatisfaction and suffering, while the visualizations of conscious bodies of light, practices such as absorbing our guru, introduce us to the very subtle fundamental level of our being. And with this subtle mind of clear light, we can break out of the prison of our ordinary gross conceptions, experience the unceasing happen and happiness of full enlightenment. Very interesting. Yeah. So these practices that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is saying, they're through special methods. This is tantric practitioners in Hayashoga Tantra. The subtle wind mind can be purified and transformed into the bodies of a Buddha. So this is moving on to the next point, how we can use some of these subtle methods. Includes using death, the death process, and what comes after to harness the potential power of the subtle mind to reveal our Buddha nature. So this is an explanation. So in Sutra, we remember from the Sutra teachings say that our main problem is having a false sense of who I am, this false sense of self, and holding on to that, the sense of concrete existence. That there is 100% me in here. So we need to cultivate the opposite of view to that, realizing the emptiness of all phenomena, including self, and using our special concentrated mind when we develop our shamatha or karma body, and focusing on how the self exists, is empty of self-existence. In Tantra, a different approach. Tantra accepts all that, but it's looking more at the effect of our ignorance of how we exist, particularly at the time of death. And so at time of death, it's our uncontrolled mind. If we, as an ordinary being, if we're not tantric practitioner, that will throw us into the next rebirth without our control. So dying uncontrolled, I'm quoting Lam Yeshe, we're forced to enter an uncontrolled intermediate state. This is part of the process of dying and being reborn. After the body, the subtle mind leaves the body, the subtle mind leaves the body at the time of death, and all the elements are dissolved. The wind, the water element, the fire element, and the ordinary mind, if it's not trained, will want to be reborn. And this is this stage between one life and the next is called the bardo being. The bardo being's invisible, but it's the subtle mind wanting rebirth, looking for a rebirth. It's called. It's said to be each bardo being lives for 7 days, and the maximum number of days, or at the end of 7 days, if they haven't found rebirth, the bardo being will be reborn as another bardo being, and they can do that 7 times, and then they will have to take rebirth. So these bardo beings, unenlightened beings, looking for rebirth, looking for the next rebirth, will throw us into the next life, and it could be human being if we're lucky, but it could also be animal, lower realm being, upper realm being, and so on. So these this is the way Tantra looks at it. So Tantra says, if we develop some practices in this life, and we can actually use this opportunity of at the time of death, when the subtle mind, all the gross minds disappear, all those, what Lam Yeshe was talking about, or his Sadhana talking about, the filth that obscures the gold, they're the gross states of mind. So as the body dissolves, the gross states of mind dissolve at the time of death, there's this incredible opportunity where the subtle, very subtle mind that is our Buddha, the mind of clear light, it's called, which has our Buddha potential, Buddha nature there. We can harness that and either using our tantric experiences from our life during our ordinary life to steer the consciousness to a favorable rebirth, perhaps a human rebirth, depending on our level of practice, perhaps a higher, what they call the pure realm, which is like this next step to Buddhahood. So, so there's quite a lot of teachings, which we won't go into too much, but just Jonathan Landau's teaching in the readings. Oh, sorry, this is the transcript that I've given you by John Landau, talking about when in our ordinary life, there are times when the subtle, the very subtle mind of clear light is manifest for just a short time. We don't usually notice it. So falling asleep is one of them. So when we fall asleep, the gross normal way of thinking, our normal consciousness disappears, and our senses we are withdrawn. Okay, so the gross senses dissolve, and so we fall into a state. At that stage, there is a mind of clear light there that we usually don't see because it's very quick when we go to sleep. And the same thing happens when we faint, when we sneeze. having sexual climax, that's said to be the best opportunity to generate the mind of clear light if we have the ability to do that. So that means we need to, of course, harness all the tantric teachings and so on. So this subtle mind normally is like the star in the daytime with the sun. It's so subtle we can't see it because the gross mind is so overwhelming. So the time of going to sleep, etc., and the time of death is when the subtle mind is left there as the gross mind dissolves. The body dissolves, the gross mind dissolves. But of course, great practitioners can also bring by their practice their single-pointed concentration. They can, by focusing on the emptiness practice, then they can actually bring to their awareness the subtle mind in ordinary meditation, not ordinary, it's special meditation. So that's another way. But when we're dying, because there is this automatic dissolution of the physical and mental body, then there's an opportunity there to harness the mind of clear light. So a little bit, just looking halfway down page 2, Jonathan Lander talks a little bit about where this subtle mind resides in the body. And he mentions the central channels and so on. So in the physical body, we've got the physical organs, and we've also got the nervous system, which the nerves are very complex, like a network of electrical wires in the body. So similarly, the Vajra body is an unphysical. In Tantra, the teachings say that there is a Vajra body, not physical. And this is the body that carries the energy force. That this is the winds. The Vajra body includes channels, what they call channels, and within the channels there are winds, and these winds are like energies that move through the body, and the mind is carried on the winds through the body. A little bit from Lama Yeshe about that. He says in his introduction, he says you just need a little bit of knowledge, but not a lot of this in the introduction teachings. So he says, in the bounds of our physical body is another far more subtle body called the Vajra body. And Vajra means indestructible. Just as the gross and perishable physical body is pervaded by ordinary nervous system, the Vajra body is pervaded by thousands of channels through which flow the energy winds and drops. These are the sources of the bliss that is so vital to highest tantric practice. So he says, not the time to. These are generation stage teachings, which means they're introduction to Tantra teachings, then they're not advanced. But he says it's useful to, at this stage, to know that one of those channels is the central channel through which the energy forces flow. The channel runs in a straight line from the crown of the head down to the base of the spine, and there are several points, focus points called chakras or energy wheels. And so these, in Tantra, each one of these energy wheels has a different function. And so by concentrating on particular energy wheels, depending on what tantric practice we're doing, we can penetrate that center, that energy center. And we're given that this is all described in the secret tantric texts, most of which we need to have an initiation to be able to study. So the main chakra is the one in the heart, Lama Yeshe said, and that's home to the very subtle mind, which he says is a priceless treasure for tantric practitioners. So this subtle mind has been with us from conception, and it's together with the supporting energy wind, the continuum of this mind has been with us for lifetimes without beginning. So although this subtle mind flows from life to life, it's rarely had the opportunity to function because it's prevented by our everyday busy mind, which is what he calls like tourists who come and go in this constant gross states of mind, the sensory mind. And they overwhelm the resident mind, which is this subtle mind. So that's what Jonathan Lander was talking about there. If you want a bit more, just read his transcript, page 36. He goes into quite a bit of detail on how this subtle mind works, particularly at the time of death, and how it can be harnessed and used to liberate ourselves from cyclic existence for realizing ultimate reality. Okay, so just moving on, the three bodies of the Buddha. So this is looking at, we're on page 3, the note, how a Buddha mind can manifest. So what is enlightenment really is what this is looking at. What does, in Tantra, from the Tantric point of view, what is it? What does an enlightened being achieve? What have they got? So these bodies are not normal bodies like our human body, but they are manifestations of Buddhahood. First one, Dharmakaya, is the enlightened mind. So this is just pure enlightened consciousness called truth body. So the Dharmakaya is what the Buddha's mind, when the Buddha's, say Shakyamuni Buddha, sat under the Bodhi tree, became enlightened, and that state of mind that Shakyamuni Buddha achieved, full enlightenment without any obscurations, fully omniscient understanding, fully compassionate, is the Dharmakaya. So the other slightly grosser form of Buddha mind is called the Sambhogakaya, which is only visible to Buddhas, to other Buddhas. So how the first two types, Dharmakaya and Sambhogakaya, are not actually visible to ordinary beings. So in order for Buddhas to be able to work with ordinary beings, they need to manifest at a grosser level, and that's called the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya allows enlightened beings to appear as ordinary beings. So this is the Buddha. Could be in the form of a monk, as Shakyamuni Buddha. He manifested as a monk. It could be in the form of an animal, as a prostitute, beggars, bridges, of inanimate things, water, roads, and so on. So these physical manifestations happen spontaneously. The Buddha mind, trying to help other beings, can, in certain circumstances, manifest in these different ways. That's why we often hear in the sutra teachings, don't harm other beings or criticize someone who might be appearing to be an enemy, because you don't know who they are. They could be a Buddha manifesting to give you a teaching. So it could be an animal in an animal form. Just the best example is the one of Atisha and a Sangha. not a teacher, a sangha, who was spending years and years meditating in the cave and never had any realizations, was praying very, very hard to see the Buddha in the form of Maitreya. And after 15 years, he gave up, went down to the village, and very despondent, saw this dog lying on the road, dying of infestations of weevils, very terrible condition. Feeling great compassion, he knelt down and tried to remove the maggots from the dog's wounds, and the dog turned into the Buddha. So the Buddha was always there, he said. Asanga said, why haven't you manifested before? And he said, I've always been here, but your compassion, your mind was so obscured, you didn't see me, and you saw me as a dog with a disease-ridden dog. But when your compassionate mind changed, you saw me as what I am now, is Buddha Shakyamuni. So although the Buddhas can manifest these different forms, this is to partly because of our obscurations, partly to help us. Excuse me. So just these, I won't go into too much detail about the bodies of Buddha and empowerment. So when we receive a higher tantric initiation, the tantric master, our guru, or whoever is giving the initiation, are giving empowerments to body, speech, and mind, these different parts of our Vajra body. And usually the chakra that's at the crown chakra, is said to be the center of our body. So if we're receiving initiation of our body, there's different types of initiation, then we visualize white light going into the crown chakra. So another type of initiation is where we get our speech blessed, and that's visualized as red light going into the throat chakra, which is at the throat. Another stage of initiation is getting our mind blessed, and that's visualized as blue light going into the heart chakra. So I'm just mentioning this because when we do the Tara practice in a minute, the part of the visualization is you visualize these blessings coming from Tara into our body, speech, and mind in the form of the three lights, white, red, and blue lights of rays of light coming into our different chakras. Okay, just briefly before we do the Tara practice, there are prerequisites for studying Tantra and practicing Tantra. So the two categories, one is called the common preliminaries, and then there's a second group, which we'll look at next week, called the uncommon preliminaries. So the uncommon preliminaries are basically getting initiation from a tantric master. We'll talk about that more. Only said to be uncommon because it's not something that you can get in everyday life. So the common preliminaries can be practiced by all of us without any initiation, and this is sutra. This is sutra teaching. So we need some level of understanding of the causal part, the sutra teaching, to be able to properly practice the tantric part. So it doesn't mean that we can need to get teachings whenever we can. If there's some tantric teachings available, and now the tantric master says that we can take it, and we want it, we're interested in taking the tantric initiation, then there's nothing to stop us. And the guru or the tantric master, such as His Holiness, will give teachings on these three topics: renunciation, bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, and emptiness, which is wisdom, before they give the initiations. So it does mean we have to have accomplished fully a renounced mind, become a completely compassionate being, and understand wisdom and emptiness before we can practice Tantra. It just means some understanding, some grounding. So first one, renunciation. We do this in other modules in Discovering Buddhism as well. Renunciation doesn't mean having some failure in our worldly life, such as losing our job, having a failed marriage or love affair, and then running away to the cave, or wanting to join a monastery because we've had some terrible disappointment. That's often, as Lami Yeshe says, this is often a misunderstanding of what renunciation is. But we make an informed decision after we've sort of seen, practiced and contemplated the Four Noble Truths, particularly the first one, the truth of suffering, all the different types of suffering in this life we have, this samsaric life. So we understand the problems of our current situation, and how it's not going to actually provide us with any lasting happiness. In fact, it will be more suffering. And so we reject that, reject chasing. It's often, Lama Yeshe, of course, definitely want to emerge from this situation of samsara, definite emergence. So this is true renunciation, and it's a very high realization. So some understanding of the shortcomings of samsaric everyday existence, and a decision that we're actually going to practice a path out of that. This also makes us less interested in chasing the pleasures of samsara, the physical sensory attractions of ordinary life. So we're just less interested in that, and so less averse to some suffering because we understand that it's part of being alive, and less interested in chasing these things that are going to end up in disappointment. Second one, bodhicitta. This is loving kindness, compassion. A dedicated attitude is what Lama Yeshe described, how he says it, being open to other beings, having an open heart, a warm heart. So sharing our happiness with others. This is also rejoicing in the happiness of others, sharing our happiness. This is the practice of rejoicing, realizing that all beings want to be happy, and just like us. And so taking delight in making them happy, and avoiding harm as much as possible, and helping as much as possible. Not emotionally, but as a calm, reasoned decision to help others. We don't need to be experts to start on being compassionate. Start with equanimity. Second, the last one, emptiness, understanding, having some understanding of the emptiness teachings. So dissolving, this is dissolving our ordinary sense of self, dissolving our limited sense of our own being. This is very important in Tantra. It's probably one of the most important of the three principles of the path. So letting go of limited view of ourselves, having some awareness of the Buddha nature, our Buddha potential, and avoiding the extreme of nihilism, that nothing exists, and what's the opposite to nihilism? Nihilism, eternalism, where the opposite is that everything exists concretely, including the self, and holding onto that. So there's a middle way of Nagarjuna's middle way of seeing how the self exists, how we exist. So the if you've had a quick look at the readings, you'll notice that Lama Zopa's, one of his whole articles is 100% on the practice of green Tara. So this practice is very much part of this module, practice of green Tara. It's an example of a tantric practice. And so I just want, if you want more background on Tara, the Buddha of Enlightened Activity, green Tara, definitely read the article by Lama Zopa. He explains how Tara embodies the Buddha, all the Buddha's enlightened activities in female form. And he also explains in great detail the meaning of the mantra, Om Tare Te Tare Ture Soha. So the actual meditation I'll lead is the one in Kathleen MacDonald's book called How to Meditate, which you might have. So she's very skillfully introduces the practice by giving some background to the practice. She gives a little bit of history, which I won't read, but as how Tara was born long ago as a princess, and she very devoted to the Buddha and had incredible compassion. And she noticed that there are many who wanted to be born male. This is in the time of the Buddha. It was seen to be preferable to advance your spiritual practice by being born a man. But Tara said, no one seems to want to be born a woman in the body of a woman. Therefore, until samsara is empty, I shall work for the benefit of sentient beings in a woman's body. So she dedicated herself to attaining complete enlightenment. And when she accomplished that goal, she did, she became as Tara the Liberator, mother of all Buddhas. So in the practice, we do quite a bit of visualizing, and the actual picture of Tara, the visual picture, I think you've probably got one at home. I'll just hold up this is the one in, that's the one in, it's not coloured unfortunately, that's the one in How to Meditate, the How to Meditate book. So when I do the meditation, I'll just briefly read the description of her posture, her form, and then part of the visualization is we visualize these three lights: white into the heart chakra, red light into the throat chakra, blessing our speech, and blue light entering our heart chakra, blessing our mind with Tara's blessed mind. There is the option of reciting the mantra for a minute or two, Om Tare Te Tare Ture Soha. So if you do have some familiarity with the mantra and would like to recite it, I'll recite it 3 times aloud, and then maybe a minute or two we can spend just reciting it silently. So that's basically it. I'll talk a bit more about mantra next week if it's new to you. These mantras, the mantra is a blessed sound, blessed by the Buddha. It's not just like an ordinary sound, so it has very much power, even if we don't understand the meaning. So perhaps I'll just mention a little bit of Lama Yeshe's teachings on the meaning of the mantra, if I can find it. Probably it's so length. Lama Zopa's explanation of the mantra is very long. I'll just mention, if I can find Kathleen McDonald's very brief explanation of the mantra. Yes, it's actually in the book How to Meditate at a different place. So Om, the word Om, the first syllable of the mantra, Om, is enlightenment. It's the goal. So that signifies the enlightened state of all being, of all enlightened beings, of all Buddhas. The word that describes enlightenment. That's the goal. Tare means she who liberates. Tara means to liberate from unfortunate rebirth, from psychic existence. Tara frees us from psychic existence, but also leads us to full enlightenment. Tutare, the third syllable, who eliminates all fears. So tare, she who liberates, eliminates all fears, tutare. Ture, who grants all success. It's the fourth syllable. Om tare, tutare, ture. Grants all success. So it's success in our practice, our spiritual goal, and it's also success in worldly life. So Tara, if we want success in relationships, business, finding perfect conditions for our Dharma practice, Tara is there to help. So this mantra can actually help us with our spiritual and worldly success. Soha, the last syllable, each word of the mantra, it means, may the blessing of Tara that are contained in the mantra Om Tare Tutare take root in our hearts. So the blessings of Om Tare Tutare, Soha, take root in our hearts. May that blessing come into our hearts. Om Tare Tutare, Soha. Very beautiful, wonderful practice. So let's get comfortable, and we'll just do the practice on Tara Liberator. Begin with that, just a few seconds, minutes to calm the mind using the breath, just watching the breath, settling the mind. Begin our practice with Tara, meditating on Tara by imagining the space around us filled with beings beyond in all the 10 directions. These include our parents and family members beside us, friends behind us, people we don't get along with in front of us, and strangers in all 10 directions in human form. Thinking all these beings, like me, like myself, are suffering, and they don't want suffering. Understanding their type of suffering, 3 types, thinking how wonderful it would be if they were free of suffering and had the peace and bliss of enlightenment. Then we just visualize in front of us Tara manifestation of all that is positive. Her body is emerald green in colour, translucent, radiant, any size that's comfortable, but a body of light, not concrete, not substantial, green light. Her left leg's drawn up, signifying complete control of the sexual energy. Her right leg is extended, indicating that she's ready to rise and aid all beings. Her left hand is at her heart in the refuge gesture. The palm facing outward, thumb and ring finger touching. Her right hand is on her right knee in the gesture of granting realizations. Each hand holds a blue woodpala flower, a symbol of unblocking the central channel. Tara is exquisitely beautiful and smiles lovingly at us. Her clothing is of celestial silk, her ornaments of precious gems. Concentrate for a few moments on the visualization, opening your heart to the energy of Tara's inexhaustible loving kindness. If you can't get a clear picture, just imagine green light, or perhaps one part of Tara, perhaps the hand, or the eye, or just green light. Next, we think of what we need in our life, our problems that need solving, our aims, and we make a prayer to Tara from our heart, asking her for help. In response to our request, she immediately sends streams of light into us. The white light flows from her forehead into our forehead, eliminating all obstacles of our body, all our health problems, blessing our body with her divine white light. Next, red light flows from her throat chakra into our throat chakra, eliminating all obstacles of speech, blessing our speech. Feel the blissful red light entering our throat chakra. Next, from Tara, from her heart chakra, blue light flows into our heart chakra, eliminating all obstacles and negatives of mind, blessing our mind with Tara's mind. As we visualize these lights, three lights, white, red and green and blue, flowing from Tara's holy body, we can recite the mantra of Tara. Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha. 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 Om Tare. As we complete saying the mantra, Om Tare Tutare Ture Soha, we then visualize Tara coming to the space above our head, facing the same direction as us, as ourselves, and dissolving into green light, which descends through the crown of our head to the heart chakra, the heart center, blessing our mind. Our mind and Tara's mind merge indistinguishably. We experience clarity, tranquility, and bliss. The blessings of Tara flow into our mind. Spending a few moments enjoying this blissful blessings from Tara. Experience the clarity and bliss of Tara's blessing. And then finally, we can just dedicate any positive energy that we've generated from this practice, from today's night's teachings, and all the practice we've done, past, present, and future. Dedicate them to all living beings, that they may attain the great joy of liberation from confusion and suffering, and become a fully enlightened being, and lead also other beings to the state of enlightenment. Also, I'll just finish with Lama Zopa's special dedication for the pandemic. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be free from all sickness. May all sickness, without exception in the world, of all transmigrating beings never occur again. May the Buddha Dharma last for a long time. May sentient beings in the world meet the Buddha Dharma and achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. Dedicating to that. Okay, thank you so much. So good to see people out there. Thanks for watching. Have a terrific night and a safe and healthy week. And I'll see you next week at the same time. Oh, just trying to think. Is it the Queen's birthday next week? Anyway, you'll find there is a week coming. It could be next week that the Queen's birthday, which means that there won't be a teaching on Monday. I'll tell you when I send out the notes. The next class. All right, take care and all the best.